You've got courage to lead. Courage to lead. Be brave and be bold. Whoa. Let it roar. Welcome to the Courage to Leap and Lead podcast, where each of our guests share the stories of courage that helped them become powerful leaders. Before we start today's show, please remember to visit courage-consulting.com, where you can find all the episodes and other excellent resources, all at courage-consulting.com. Now here's your host, leadership courage coach, C.B. Bowman.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of my interview with Sharon. And that's all I'm going to say because it's fabulous. Sharon, continue.
Yeah, all good. So we were just saying, so I was contextualizing maybe like a risk, that I feel like I'm taking now, which is that burnout is an overwhelm and people are just feeling like things are not working is such a pervasive issue these days. And I think that burnout, it's not coming from too much to do, but from too little power. And I say that because all of these situations that we face where, we just don't feel heard by our management peers, or we just, we feel overlooked. You're a talented woman, you get overlooked for promotion. And, or it's someone in your personal life and they're just all about them and you just can't get your needs met. These are really the situations, or there's someone on your team, you just can't get them to live up to your expectation. These are situations in which we react, right? And we don't feel in control and we feel done to. Right. And again, we feel more like the casualty than the creator of the outcome. And these are the things that put us on the fast track. It was actually during COVID, I was coaching a CHRO, and CHROs, as you know, had very, very important roles. They were pivotal,
Yes.
And this CHRO, she was working, I don't know how many hours a day. Just, and kind of exhausted, but totally exhilarated. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't burnt out. Yeah, she needed a few more hours, sleep. She needed to catch up on the weekends or whatever. But like she was in her flow. She was in her purpose. She was in control. She was not burnt out. It's an example of what I mean. It doesn't come, from too much to do per se. It's when it's layered on. And so that's what I think so many people are experiencing. We're experiencing this where there's a culture in which we don't feel we're belonging, and there's policies that don't feel supportive, or it's just a battle to get things done or to get approvals or to compete with a cross-functional, department. And then like we've been talking about. And then on top of that, in our personal lives, people are recognizing that things are getting triggered in them, things that they've had as patterns for a long time. And so I think that that's why people feel like things are like just overwhelming. Yeah. And then the world, feels out of our control, things that are happening, and that activates fear and anxiety. And so this is really what is burning people out. And the antidote is to be in your power, because then you feel, like you walk through the world like with Wonder Woman cuffs. You know what I mean? Power is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Way of walking through the world that if something happens that, you used to feel questioned but you don't react and take it personally in the same way. This time you kind of have a more objective understanding of what was going on. And you know how to say something in a way that gets the other person to stop doing it, or at least you're detached from their negative effect on you. If you're
hold on. I want to talk about this because this is critical. Not that everything we haven't spoke about is critical. So what we're talking about is like somebody swimming, like a salmon swimming upstream every single day.
It's just a battle every day.
7. How do you stop that without drowning? So the fear that people have in the stress is not only the situation that's triggering that stress, but it's also the stress of realizing if you stop it, something terrible could happen. You could lose your job. You don't have money to pay the rent. So therefore, you've got to continue in this daily stress of not being respected, not being allowed to be courageous, not being able to be in your true power. Where's the point where you can stop the Ferris wheel and get off and build your own?
Yeah. Well, it would be in your power, you know what I mean? If it's what's right, for your life, or would help you to feel more in control, to leave and to start your own thing. We definitely see that as a trend. But what I see is that a lot of people are on the brink of leaving because they don't know how to be in their power in situations. And as soon as they do, they can turn the whole situation around, you know what I mean? And make the whole culture of the team where they can thrive and everyone else can thrive. So there are so many.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it is going to sound very racist, but I think that's more true for people who are not of color. You have more options to be in your power.
Mm-hmm.
I think people of color have less options, and the repercussions are so much stronger that your power just goes from maybe 50 to minus 50. How do you stop that from happening?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of reality to what you said, because we know that the workplace, our culture is, rife with racial bias. So that's true. And by the same token, I'm saying that I think universally that we have more power than we think. Right.
Agreed.
And that you would want to exercise, the full power that you have in any situation. You would want to try to maximize your control. You would want to always approach it by being impeccable for your 50% before you decided that you couldn't be seen and that you would have to leave and start your own, unless leaving and starting what your own is what you want to do. Then it's, totally within
or
your
going someplace else.
Yeah. Or going someplace else. Yeah, for sure. So there's many examples of that. I actually have, many examples of that in the book. Let me just give you like a couple. So there's a story of a woman who was a client of mine. She's a Black woman, and she was passed over for promotion twice within 18 months. And she saw her peers get promoted. And so, of course, she was upset. Of course, she took it personally and assumed that it had something to do with her being a Black woman. And so when we talked together, one of the things that we talked about was to ask the magic question, which is, how might this be happening for you, not to you? And that really spun her head around. And because that just seemed like, no, this is, I'm facing a typical bias of a Black woman who's being invisible, who's, been lauded by senior leadership, who's, had a big role and who's not being recognized for it while other people are. And, but when I asked her that question and we talked about it, she came to realize that actually having like a next step up as a promotion really wasn't what she wanted. That actually she really saw herself as like a VP role, or even a chief people officer, was in as a diversity space, or even like a chief people officer kind of role. And it totally like opened her eyes, you know what I mean, to what could be possible for her. And then she started to be getting herself involved in those kind of projects within her own company. Within a matter of weeks, she was actually presenting, you know what I mean, to the senior leadership about, some of these cross company dashboards. And she was resentful, but it actually really opened her eyes. And she was looking at other roles, but she ended up staying there and getting a skip level promotion because she kind of owned it and she presented herself in that way. She was more intentional about what it was that she was going for, and the way that she influenced, and the language that she used, and the people that she had on her stakeholder map to influence. So it's just an example of she had more power than she thought in that situation. She thought that she had none.
Tell us more about for you versus to you. What does for you mean?
Yeah. So, because when anything happens, especially if it's a bias kind of situation, we just immediately, I mean, I would get mad, you know what I mean? You know, if there's an invisible force that's thwarting your life. And so whether it's bias or whether it's anything that is happening that is not what we want, we always, the first thing is like, why is this happening to me? Why are they doing this? They shouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this. This is wrong. The world shouldn't be this way. And it just puts us into that, you know, position, as she said, and there's a story about this in the book. She said, when it was happening to me, I felt like the victim. When we reframed it and I looked at it as happening for me, I saw myself as the victor. And she said, it opened up my mind to a role that I could have. It opened up my mind to owning the value that I do bring. It helped me to think more broadly about roles that I want, or, you know, functions that I could be bringing to the organization. And she ended up raising her she ended up realizing, I don't even want that promotion that my peers got. That's like a little step up. Like, I'm not even here for that. Like, I'm here for my big game. She put herself on that path.
Why the
She
word
made it work for
you?
her.
Why the words for?
Because she saw that this was something that was an opportunity for her, that was like a lesson. Like she was realizing that maybe she was on a track for some, like, you know what I mean, incremental kind of gain. And when this happened, she was like, that's not even my path. Like, I could have gotten on that path and just, you know, kind of done that game. But she's like,
So the word for meaning helping you to realize that there's something greater than.
Yeah. And that it was within her control. And
And
it wasn't happening. It wasn't outside of her control happening to her, but it was something that she could turn around in her favor. And when you live your life in that way, like, you just walk through your life in flow, because no matter what happens, you make it work for you.
I love it. Love
That's
that.
resilience.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You said you had another example.
Yeah, that's the one that comes to my mind right now. Let me think of another one as we're talking.
Okay, because these are I don't want you to give away the whole book, but
yeah, it's true. It's
good
chock full.
stuff.
Well, I'll give another example, actually, of a Black woman who I worked with, and her story is also in the book, but I'll just abbreviate it. So she was in an organization where there was a lot of, her manager would contact her from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Everything was chaotic. You know what I mean? She was overwhelmed. And the day that I met her on our first session, she said, I can't do this anymore. And she was both setting a boundary and sharing her powerful truth, all in that phrase. And she just couldn't deal anymore. And she felt like she had no power in the situation, right? And but we started by her being impeccable for her 50%. And first thing she did was she went to her manager and she put together like a 1-slide shock and awe of all the things that she was doing. And her manager was like, oh my God, like, I had no idea. Okay. But he was helpless too. So we couldn't count on him. So she had to be in her power. So she put together a root cause understanding of why everything from every function was spilling onto her. And she gathered the parties, the heads of like the functions who were participating in this. And she painted a vision of kind of why this was happening at root cause and where they could all get to. And they weren't that motivated because it meant they had to take back some of the work, but actually because she knew how to influence, and we scripted that in our coaching. She brought everyone along in the vision. She actually restructured the group and the way that they did, all the groups worked together. So she was ready to leave on the first day, you know, that I met her, and within, I mean, I don't know, it was probably 3 months or so, she had restructured the whole thing. And the CEO of the company called a meeting with her. She was, I think 4 or 5 levels down from him. And he said, first of all, you're getting a $95,000 retention bonus if you stay another year. And we're putting you on the fast track to become chief technology officer of this company. So like, get busy. And he now has her in all kinds of meetings. And, you know, she's really kind of like changed around. She was the thermometer and she became the thermostat. And she brought everyone along. Now she's sort of like in charge of bringing together the IT and the tech, you know, kind of functions. And she's really playing a hand kind of in how things go. And, you know, she really came into this feeling like she came in at a salary that it was a step below. She did not feel seen. You know what I mean? She had resentment about it, but didn't want to say anything because was grateful for the opportunity. And she just wanted to prove herself and the whole thing. But she took on all this stuff because she wanted to prove herself and she wanted to please, but we changed it around to what was really right for the functions and what was a plan that was going to be in the best interest of all. So she still works pretty darn hard, but you know what I mean? Now it's like there's a whole structure, and she made it better for herself and she made better for everyone around her, because that's what it looks like to be in your power. And now she's pretty right-sized when it comes for her salary.
I wish I had you as a coach when I was growing up. And still do. So
we help each other.
Oh, what wonderful stories. Now, Sharon, I have to push you a little bit more. So these are wonderful stories about other people. We want to know about you. What happened, one situation in your professional life where you felt, oh crap, I screwed this up, or it just wasn't happening the way I really wanted to. And what did you learn from that, and how did you flip it?
Yeah.
Could be in writing your book.
Yeah. Well, actually,
an audience, while Sharon is thinking,
yeah, okay,
she is really giving a really, really good example of what happens when you take failure and move it into the success bucket, because you don't think of it as failure. You think of it as success because it's an education. It's your personal university, and you learn from it and you move on and you let the negative go and it moves into the positive zone. And that's why Sharon is having trouble thinking of it.
No, I got one. I just, there's so
okay.
Many. And so, you know, just to contextualize this, when you asked me this earlier, actually, I was saying that I thought that the way of thinking about burnout is, you know, having to do with power is an example of me trying to be in my power to speak my truth and to do something that's a little risky, or, you know, kind of a reframe or a new way of talking about something that I don't have any guarantee that people are going to buy into. And I could be putting myself out on a limb in terms of, you know, what I'm talking about, and people won't be interested in hiring me for it. So that's why I answered it that way earlier. But I'll just give you an example from when I was writing a book. So, I worked with a ghostwriter who was very, very valuable and strategic in helping write the book, but was really, really not capturing my voice in a way that I felt comfortable and wanted to. And so we started to experience a lot of friction together. And when I tried to bring my concerns to her, and I really felt like she was very set in her ways and was really not listening to me. And I was like, I am on a deadline. My whole life is like invested in like putting so much time and effort, you know, into this. I'm completely frustrated. I was going to bed with that like anger pinball, you know, like going around my head, and like I had to fire her, or I had to, and then I was going to be in a lurch. I mean, the whole thing was just like a very out of control situation for me. And so I did one of the approaches that I talked about in the book, which is, again, I just wanted to like take a rash action. But instead, I went to her and I took what I call a 3D perspective, a three-dimensional perspective. And so I came in setting a neutral pre-frame, which I think is always a good thing to do.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I kind of said, like, look, this, this seems like we're not I don't forget the words, but whatever, we're not in sync, or we're having to kind of go back on and forth, and we don't feel like we're getting each other in this. I'd really love to hear from you, kind of like what your, point of view is on this. I'd really love to share with you some examples of kind of how I think the voice, you could be capturing my voice better. And let's see if we can come up with a way, kind of that can work for both of us. It was very neutral, when really what I wanted to do is I wanted to come in there and be like, you know what I mean?
You're
I
fine.
have said this so many times. I'm completely aggravated with you. I need you. I'm paying you, or whatever I wanted to say at the time.
Yes.
And like, I'm about to fire you. Or any variation of those things were things that were on the tip of my tongue. But instead I came in much more kind of neutral and kind of having understanding. That's being the thermostat. Can you see that?
Yes.
And I really asked her, like, what was her process and what was going on for her. And she said things like, you know what I mean, that there were too many points and it was hard for her to figure out which one was the most important. And I was like, that totally is, that's probably true, actually. And, that makes sense to me, actually, why it might be hard for you to pick out the most. And maybe you were picking the ones that weren't the most important to me. And then I was able to like sort of say, like, let me give you some examples where here's really what I was trying to say. And here's the way you said it. And it just really, did not come out that way. It was very frustrating for me. And she was like, I totally see that now. So I just create, and then we just like got much, and then we like built a process, you know what I mean? Where what I was going to do, I was going to talk through it with her before I actually wrote the chapter and sent it. So we just made like a whole process that was like way better, and was better for all of us. So it's just a good example, you know what I mean? Where I just could have been the thermometer, and I could have just come in there and been rash, or like, blown a circuit on her or whatever. And it would have left all of us like in the lurch, and more friction and the whole thing. But I came and I said a neutral pre-frame. I was the thermostat. I set the tone. I really listened. Like when she was talking, I really wanted to be like, but I really listened. And I was like, you're right. Like, I totally am doing that. Like, thank you. Like, that's super helpful. Thank you. I really could do that differently. And when I talked, I presented in a way that was neutral. And she was like, yeah, you're right. Like that, I could totally see how I'm not capturing that. And we just created a process that was in the best interest of all. Because when you're in your power, right, you raise everyone around you. So it's just every day we face this, and we have more power than we think.
I love that example, because it is so hard to do when you're in a mode of upset to go, okay, I need to hear the other person. I need to consider, I might not agree, but let me see how I can reframe so that we can at least come to a neutral point. Love it. Absolutely love it. Hey, Sharon, this has been a remarkable interview. And you know what? I want to make sure that you see your old interview from 2 years ago, because wait till you see the difference. And thank you so much for being in your power, in your truth. I don't even know what else to say, because it's the new you, and I love it. Absolutely love it. I feel much more connected in a more powerful way. And thank you. Thank you so much. Audience, I hope you feel the same way, because you don't know Sharon like I do. You're not as fortunate.
It's such an honor to be here with you. I think being in our power looks good on all of us, and has the effect, right, of connecting and really being able to create the world around you that you want to live in. Like, that is the opportunity. When you're in your power, you shift the power dynamic. When you're in your power, you raise everyone around you. So go get the book, and you can find book resources at inyourpowerbook.com, inyourpowerbook.com. And there's lots of things that I refer to in the book that are downloadable resources. And one thing that's really, really fun that I encourage for everyone is I maintain Spotify playlists for whatever emotional state you're in, and you want to do like a dance break to move it through. You can find those at inyourpowerbook.com. That's like one really super easy way of changing your emotional state, as well as like all the other just chock full of strategies in your power book. And for anyone who wants to reach out to me for coaching or for speaking or women's leadership development programs, you can find me at sharonmelnick.com. Thank you so much, CB. This is it's such a delight.
Well, audience, you know that Sharon just violated all the rules of LinkedIn because we're not supposed to do that.
Oh,
But
you can.
when you're in your power, anything can happen. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, audience, for being here. And P.S., buy the book. Have a great week, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Sharon, thank you.
Thank you, CB.